You know, it's not just us. We got a little girl we got to think about.
I know. I am thinking about her. I can't do this anymore.
Baby, you're just thinking about yourself. What about Frankie? You want her to grow up in a broken home? Is that what you want?
I'm thinking about Frankie.
You're not thinking about Frankie. No, you're not. Is this how you want her to grow up?
I don't want her to grow up in a home where her parents treat each other like this. Don't.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Baby, I'm sorry.
I can't do this anymore.
I know. Baby, I'm just fighting, you know? Fighting for my family.
Hey there, and welcome to episode 48 of Down to Watch. Down to Watch is the podcast where we ask, are you down to watch? I'm your host, Kahmeela, and we'll be talking about movies, music, TV, and just general pop culture goodness. Today specifically, this is another episode of the Hey Girl edition, where we are rediscovering the filmography that is Ryan Gosling. And I have a special guest today, filmmaker, and I should have asked before I started recording your last name.
Cassun.
Cassun. All right, Alex Cassun. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, Alex Cassun, Indieground Films. My production company just moved here to Pittsburgh.
And where are you coming from?
It's a long answer for a short question. Most recently, I was in LA. I spent about 10 years there, but in between, I moved back home to Salt Lake City. I moved to Portland, where I thought I was going to settle in for good.
Mm.
I married a Brit, ended up in Scotland.
Oh, wow.
Lived in London for about 4 years, almost 4 years.
Wow.
And then back to LA for a year for a bit of sunshine, and out here.
You have had quite the bounce around.
The last 7 years have been pretty much nonstop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you enjoy the bouncing around the new locations and whatnot? Or?
I did when I was a single guy. I had really enjoyed being nomadic. I fell in love with Portland, though, and so I wanted to move there and live there forever. And then we were going to get married and stay in Portland, but we ended up in Scotland instead. And yeah, I think I'm no longer nomadic. I would love to just settle in and be somewhere, which is why we got a house here, and we're not leaving. So
Pittsburgh is it?
Yeah,
These are the roots.
Yeah,
this is where they come from. This is where they're going.
Their roots are down now. Yeah.
So your production company, Indieground Films. What type of films do you delve into?
Well, it's a very good question. It's independent underground, so I really like DIY, working with kind of just resourceful go-getters with no money.
Love it.
And that's the type of films I like to make. I love little indie features. Me personally, I gravitate towards little indie dramas, which is why I think we're going to be talking about Blue Valentine today.
Yay!
Films like The Celebration is one of my favorite films. So that's kind of my personal taste. I love thrillers and suspense films as well. My wife's a big horror buff, so I've kind of turned the corner on that. So there's been so many brilliant films over the last few years that they hadn't been in my wheelhouse before, but they absolutely are now.
Well, that's great. Yeah, because so you weren't a horror buff until you got.
Yeah, I could appreciate this genre, but I always I had a very snobbish look on it for the most part, mostly because of what I was making. I was working as a production designer in LA, and most of the time the films I was working on were very terrible horror films or very bad like sci-fi films and action movies. Nothing that ever kind of endeared itself to me from like my indie art house side. but she's got she loves bad horror films, but she knows they're bad. And so we'll watch movies together all the time, and sometimes I'll sit through and watch one of her bad ones. But generally speaking, she's got a really good nose for great horror films as well. So they have a festival in London called Fright Fest, and they show like 200 or 100 horror movies every year.
Wow.
And we will go through every single trailer, and she'll say, that looks crap, that's not going to be good. But every once in a while we see one that's great, and we've never watched a bad one.
That's awesome.
Yeah, just she knows good horror films. And then, this year I would think, I've seen not nearly as many movies as I want to yet this year, but my favorite movie of the year so far is called Raw. It's this Belgian horror film it's a coming-of-age story about a girl who goes to university, and her sister's there, and it's this little character study about a coming-of-age story about a teenage girl going to college that turns into this really brutal, cannibalistic nightmare film.
Interesting.
But it's absolutely gorgeous. One of the most beautiful films you'll see in your life. It's got one of the best soundtracks I've heard in years. The acting is amazing.
Wow.
It's just top down, like a beautiful, beautiful, gorgeous film that is just gory. And there were 3 scenes in it that I could not watch. Like, I was just covering my eyes and looking away. Like, it's too much for me. And my wife's like, oh yeah, this is great. That's fantastic. So it did everything I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be a beautiful little like indie film, and also a really brutal, hard to watch.
Called Raw. Is your wife in film?
No, she's not.
Oh, this is just a natural born.
Yeah. No, she has a lot of talents. I think would transition into a career in the industry if she wanted, but that's not what she does. So.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so we are going to get into Blue Valentine, as Alex said, which was released in 2010. The plot summary of this film is the relationship of a contemporary married couple charting their evolution over a span of years by cross-cutting between time periods. Directed by Derek Cianfrance, written by Derek Cianfrance, Joey Curtis, and Cami DeLavine. Our personal histories with the movie. I don't think I saw this in the theater. I think I probably waited till it was on DVD or something. But it's always been one of my favorites. It's just a really well done thing, I think. But we'll get into that. But Alex, you have a pretty cool, I guess, Sundance story about when this film premiered there.
Yeah, if I can tell a bit of a longer story.
Sure.
Okay, cool. We've got
get into it.
Settle in.
I want to hear all of it.
Yeah. So I was in LA at the time. It was 2009, and I was really frustrated with like day-to-day life there. Like I mentioned earlier, I was a production designer, and I wasn't really liking the movies I was making. The movies I was writing, the type of films or scripts that I'd write were very what they would call European pacing, as a nice way of saying very slow and boring. But little art house cinema type of thing I wanted to make. I've written a couple scripts. I had one that was called Filming, which was a truck driver, a hitchhiker, and a dog in an 18-wheel truck driving through the desert in the middle of the night. And it was just a conversation between the two guys. It almost takes place in real time. Like the movie would have been an hour and a half, but the time frame would have been about 4 hours or so. And I wanted to throw the script out the window and just work with the actors, develop the characters independently of each other, then get into the cab of this truck and just have them talk. And I had the story beats beat sheeted out. We knew where we wanted to go with it. We knew the kind of twists and turns we wanted. We still wanted to be suspenseful and deep and dramatic, but we wanted it to be very kind of organic to the characters that we kind of created together. I was working as a production designer or an art director on a little indie comedy, and I had met the line producer through that. I had talked with her. She loved the idea of the script. We put together financial perspectives. She shopped it around. We were having meetings with producers, and I was finally feeling like, 9 years in LA, it's kind of starting to come together.
Yeah.
And every single meeting fell apart. Like, one, I didn't really know how to pitch the project and articulate what I want out of the film.
Mm-hmm.
Two, like, I'd never directed a feature, and I definitely haven't directed a feature with no, quote-unquote, no script.
Mm.
The meetings, one meeting I had was a pilot with a bunch of money and an actor or a son who wanted to be an actor. So he's like, cast my son, we'll get Tommy Lee Jones to be the truck driver, we'll throw in some flashback scenes and a love story and rewrite the script and all this stuff. And I'm like nodding, I'm like, we can make this happen. Like, I could totally, as long as I get a director's cut, I can totally,
right.
Yeah, good luck getting Tommy Lee Jones for $1 million little indie, but other than that, like, his son was the right age. If we're throwing the script out the window, I can help him create a character that he can act to, whether he can act or not. So I got very excited with it, but at the end of it, he's just like, I want a friend of mine to direct it, and I want to give you very little money for the script.
Oh.
And so I walked away at that point. I was just so frustrated, and I was living at the time with like 5 people, and 2 of them were actors, one of them was a cinematographer, and we just said, were we allowed to swear?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was like, fuck it, let's go.
Be all you.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. The freedom of this is amazing. So we were all very frustrated for very different reasons, but all kind of in the same boat. And we just said, fuck it, let's go make a movie. And a month later, with no script, we just had index cards that said like interior coffee shop day. Emma walks in, sees her cousin, says hello. And that's our scene. Mm-hmm. And we were creating it on the spot. I knew the overall story I wanted to make. I worked with the actors to sort of develop their characters ahead of time, but I wanted a lot of it just to be improv. And we shot an entire feature in 5 days. Huh. And we just had to get it out. It was just like this creative floodgate open, and we just knocked it out. We're all very happy with it.
I assume it wasn't a lot of locations.
It was a lot of locations.
Really?
Actually. Yeah. We went out from LA on a Monday morning or Sunday night to Palm Springs, where I had lived for a couple of years, or on and off for a couple of years. And we had a coffee shop and the house that we were filming in, and we had all these locations all around town, and we were just kind of winging it and jumping around. But the way we did it was myself, the cinematographer. We were supposed to have a sound guy, but he didn't show up on the day, and it was like, do we cut? Like, we only have until Thursday afternoon to make this movie because one of our leads has to leave, so we have to shoot everything with him by then. But we knew that if we didn't go film it, we weren't going to make anything, and we were just going to go back to the grind. So we just said, fuck it, like I will do the sound, write the script in my head as I'm directing it.
Oh my goodness.
We have a camera guy. We're going to go with practical lightings for the most of the film. And we basically, the way we filmed it, I told you this was a long story, but
this is fascinating.
It's getting to a point. And so we were jumping around locations. We had like, let's say, an hour in a bar and that they just, turn the music off for us before rush hour and all that. And we would set the camera down, film one take that was like 7 or 8 minutes of them rambling, and move the camera. And I'd talk to the actor and say, that was fantastic, but let's not talk about Bob Dylan and Doritos on this take. And so we do another take where they kind of shrink the dialogue a little bit and get it a bit more kind of zeroed in on what we want. We'd rotate the camera again, get one more take that was like 3 minutes, and it was great, and then we'd move on. So we got a bit of coverage, but no lighting, no real plan. And this went on for 4.5 days, and finished editing it. And at that point was when I would already actually didn't finish editing, but, did a rough cut. And by now I'm leaving LA. So I'd already put in plans to move up to Portland. I was on my way out. But last stop before leaving LA flew up to work at Sundance, where I grew up in Utah. I've always wanted to go to Sundance. A friend of mine's worked there since high school, since graduating. And she's like, well, why don't you come work at Sundance with us? So I'm like, yeah. I didn't want to go until I had a film there, but,
right.
What the hell, I'm going to dive in. So I was actually working sound for the Sundance channel. And so basically my job was to, like, mic up everybody who came in. And one of the first people that came in on the day was for Blue Valentine. It was the director, Derek Cianfrance. Sorry. And Ryan Gosling and Michelle Williams. And I'm like, oh, this is fantastic. I'm a big fan of theirs. Michelle Williams is one of my favorite actors.
Wait, I'm going to have to stop you right there. So you mic'd Ryan Gosling?
Yeah. So the story I like to tell, the side story.
So, basically, I'm like 1 degree. Oh, no!
No! So, he's the nicest guy in the entire world. But you have, great position, obviously.
Yeah, tell me, what is the assholery?
There's none. No, he's not. He's the nicest guy in the world. And so I'm like, well, he's got to have some fault, right? I just tell people he's an asshole just because I like to see that response. But no, he's just absolutely, he's a sweetheart. He was pleasant to everybody, and he was just really professional. And then Michelle Williams was great. Like, I had to get up her shirt to, like, wire in this much. And I'm really nervous because it's the first person I've ever done this before. And I'm like, Wendy and Lucy's one of my favorite movies ever. And she's like, nobody's ever seen that. I'm like, oh, that's great. So I scored a
right.
Yeah, Wendy and Lucy's just amazing. I don't know if you've seen it.
I've heard of it. I don't think I've ever seen it.
It's literally Michelle Williams and her dog, like, walking around Portland. And, like, she loses her dog, so she wanders around Portland. But it's so heartbreaking. It's so, like, amazing. So I've been sort of in love with her since that movie, and then I had this chance to kind of, like, chat with her for a minute. It was wonderful. So I'm sitting there and I'm kind of helping the audio guys and making sure that everybody's, being recorded properly and listening to what they have to say about the movie. And I never heard of Blue Valentine at the time. I knew I think its premiere was at Sundance. And the director was talking about how he had thrown a lot of the script out the window. Like they improvised a ton of stuff. And so I'm like, oh, cool. I just improvised a full feature. I'd love to know how you did it. And, for the next one I want to do. And he was just talking about how, like, for example, the bridge scene, like the famous scene over the bridge, he went up to Michelle Williams and he's like, well, we can't end this scene until, you're not allowed to reveal your secret. And he went up to Ryan Gosling and says, we cannot end the scene until you know what her secret is. And then he just let them loose. And apparently Ryan Gosling is just, at the time he was telling us a story about how he used to have nightmares about drowning and things like that. And so during the scene, he crawls over the bridge, but they don't have stunt guys. They don't have they don't have anything to catch him. And so that was, her reactions were genuine because she's like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, and so he's freaking her out.
Oh my God.
He's probably freaking out the crew and the directors as well. He's like, I don't want to be the guy in charge, or like responsible for Ryan Gosling dying. Like, every woman in the world would kill me. And finally she breaks and she says, I'm pregnant. And it was just such a big moment in the movie. Although I've always misremembered it, I thought she said I had an abortion. Oh. So I totally misremembered it until I rewatched it. And I was like, oh, she tells him, that's the moment she tells him she's pregnant. But yeah, anyway, so it was really great to just see how the director worked or listen to him talk about it, because I'd never really I watch a lot of mumblecore films, which are heavy improv, but there's not a whole ton of drama with it. It's just characters, which is really interesting. So it was my first real lesson on how to create drama with no script, but I'd already just shot a feature. Right. And it was nice to see my way of going about it was kind of done similarly.
Yeah, exactly.
Obviously, they did a lot better.
I think that's one of the great things about this film. One of the real intriguing points of it is that it's mostly improv. And I don't think I knew that until I started doing research for it this week. And it's just you get a sense of it. Yeah. The kind of just with the characters and everything. But it's just amazing to me how the tension that the director created on set. I read that I guess the Michelle and Ryan lived together for a few months. Yeah. They shot the younger scenes first, and then they lived together for a few months, and then they shot the older scenes. And they had to live on the same budget as their characters would be making. And they and the director would try to create the situations for them to pick fights with each other. And I think there was some point he was trying to get it so Ryan could understand what real rejection felt like, and he would try to be affectionate with Michelle and she would turn him away. And so it's just it's really interesting to me how he manipulated the director basically just manipulated all these relationships.
Yeah, it's you could tell that there's one thing that I know, the script is brilliant, but the dialogue is the character. It's from the actors. They obviously put a lot of time and effort into their characters and understanding where they come from. But the back and forth of the timelines, the way they interweave, was definitely plotted out ahead of time. And so that's what, drives the story, is that we need a contradictory element here. We need to have some ironic twists here. And that all comes from spending a lot of time story beating it out and plotting it out, but then trusting the actors to deliver something. And one of the things, I just rewatched it this morning. Not that I was being lazy, but I have a terrible memory, so I wanted to keep it as close as possible.
Fair enough.
But one of the things that really jumped out to me, I kind of expected, when I saw it at Sundance, I walked away from the movie saying that was absolutely brilliant. I really only had one critique in the whole film, and it was that I didn't think he would smoke around his daughter.
Right.
That's it. That's my only critique.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was thinking the same thing. I was really, he's going to pick her up and really smoke all in her face like this?
Yeah, exactly. And so but literally everything else, my memory of the movie otherwise was just it's perfect. Everything about this is absolutely perfect. So it was interesting to me to go back to it 7 years later and think, well, I'll watch it again, and maybe I was just overexcited about it. Maybe my memory of it was different than that, or maybe I've grown as a filmmaker or somebody who can analyze films, and my opinion will be different, and I can start picking it apart a bit, so we'll have something to talk about. it's perfect. Like it's a perfect film. The script's amazing. The set design is amazing. The acting is amazing. The music is amazing.
Right.
I had nothing to really pick apart, but I ended up finding myself really analyzing the details that I knew watching it the first time were quality details, but I didn't understand to the depth of everything. Like the art direction is absolutely amazing, and little things like their wardrobe and the way that he as an adult is wearing black all the time, and she's wearing colored patterns, blue and red, kind of show up throughout the whole thing. But then when they flash back to the younger, like when they get married, she's in this white dress and he's in this blue and white or blue and red suit. And so they spent a lot of time developing the costume design for it, and that the way that works with the lighting, the red and blue lighting throughout. And there's times where people show up wearing purple, which middle of red and blue, and the symbolism within the colors and the way it works throughout the art direction as well as throughout the cinematography is just absolutely fantastic. And then there was a couple things I loved, which is the bridge scene that we're talking about, which was the moment that he decided he's going to do anything for her, was when he absolutely loved her, and he well, I'll go back to this point in a minute, but giving space, I think, is a big part of the movie. But that's the only time you see them up until that point where you see them actually give a bit of room.
Interesting.
And he's in the background, the deep background. She's walking towards the foreground. And you think that he's going to leave her, but you know that he doesn't, because we've seen it in the future. But at the moment, she's thinking, this guy's can't love me. He's going to walk away from me. And so I'll walk away first. And so she's getting further and farther away, and he's in the background. That's the only time we see them with any space in the whole movie. Otherwise, they're right on top of each other all the time.
That's true.
And her point in the whole movie is like, you need to give me space.
Right.
That's what I want. At the end, she has this big speech in this very like subtle way. But she's just like, all I need is space.
Right.
And the only other time we see them have any distance is when he's walking away at the very last shot and he's going into the clouds,
fireworks and everything. Wow. That's a really, really great observation there. I didn't even think about that.
The bridge comes back 2 other shots in the film. One is, I wrote them down, again, terrible memory. One is when, sorry about my notes here,
okay.
people, this is not good.
As long as you can read them, that's okay.
Yeah. Let's see, filled with so it's the Brooklyn Bridge in the background as he reflects on falling in love. So there's one moment where he's having a voiceover narration with his coworker, and it's nighttime, and the lights are lit up, and it's just a gorgeous shot, and the bridge is in the background. The next time we see the bridge is when he's climbing over the edge and threatening to jump, and she reveals that, she's pregnant. And then the third and only other time we see the bridge in the background is when they've just had their argument. He just punched the doctor in the nose. They're walking out. He takes the ring off and throws it, turns around, the bridge is in the background. So it plays this really important symbolic part of his story, but it's so subtle.
Yeah.
And, those are things I recognize like as quality when I'm watching it the first time, but I didn't really know. And so I'm watching it the second time, I'm noticing the costume. I'm noticing the paint on his fingers.
Yeah, like that, like those so subtleties detailed. Like that, yeah.
So it's so rich, yeah.
Yeah, so you mentioned when he was talking to his coworker, and that's like kind of the moment sort of when we really meet young Dean. And he says something, they're talking about, is this the same scene you're talking about when they're discussing romance and women? And
it's not the same scene, but it feels like it should have been butted up to each other. And I can't remember if it leads into it or if it comes out of it, or if it's just separate in time.
I think it might be separate in time, actually. But this is just kind of like gives us his entire relationship sort of with Cindy. When he says men are more romantic than women. We get married, we marry like one girl because we're resistant the whole way until we meet one girl and we think I'd be an idiot not to marry this girl. Girls get to a place where they pick the best option. I know girls who get married think, oh, he's got a good job. They spend their whole life looking for Prince Charming, and they marry the guy that's got a good job and is going to stick around.
Yeah.
So that kind of, the whole thing, it kind of it makes me question, did Cindy ever really love him, or was it just just in the circumstance? Just the fact that, everything is new and beautiful and wonderful in those first couple months in a relationship. You love it. You can't keep your hands off each other. Everybody loves everything about everybody. And, and then she gets pregnant and he doesn't leave. He sticks around and not even knowing that for sure that's his kid. More than likely it's not his kid. And, and he's willing to do anything for her. And she's just like, okay, then I will go ahead and pick this guy.
Yeah. I feel like it was definitely a lot of compromise in the hopes that she would have a long-lasting good relationship. Going back to the point that he's giving, what I love about the script, and whether all improv or not all improv or whatever, is that it tells you everything you need to know about the characters, where he's coming from. So what he says in that speech is, guys are more romantic than women. But then the coworker's like, dude, you just need to go get laid. So what he's doing is he's basically projecting his own thoughts on what men are and aren't. And so he's this lovable romantic type, but he's just a loser. And his dad was a loser who was a gifted musician as well. He says in the the dinner conversation. And so Michelle Williams, Cindy's sitting there saying, I love this guy. He has potential, which comes up a couple times in the movie.
Right.
He works a shitty job right now, but he's a great musician and he's a good singer and he's got all these talents. But then she's just worried that he's going to become his father, and she's worried that she's going to marry her father. And
right.
So they do an amazing job of making her character sympathetic, and we can empathize with her, even though she's leaving him, and we all love him. He's such a charismatic guy, but she has to leave him.
Right.
And it's wonderfully well done in that we understand their perspective. He puts out into words. There's no subtlety about it. He says what he's about, which is, I'm a romantic, and this is what I think women are, and he gets that. But also she says everything that she's about as well, where she just wants space. She just wants room to think. And he's not a thinker. He's a talker. He does things.
Right. She says something like, I wish you would say what you, or think about what you say instead of saying what you think.
Exactly. And he starts laughing at her, but she finally just says what she really wants. So I love that there's no subtlety about, like, there's no hint about, or there's no question about who they are as characters. It's, it's yin and yang. It's, absolutely completely different people. And yet they're both trying really hard to make something work. He goes out of his way to say, I never thought I was going to get married. I never thought, didn't want to have children, but here I am. So he makes his own compromises as well. So she gets with this guy who she knows, she has her qualms about relationships, but she gets with this guy that she knows is being a good father. She knows he's good to her, but that's not good enough for her. But she tries. She tries really hard. And so as much as you want to be angry at one or the other, then Derek, the director, did such a good job of making them such well-rounded people. You can't fault them for what happens.
Exactly. You empathize with both of them equally for the most part, because you see that, I guess, I'll say 6 or 7 years they've been together, they've been married. And, it just looks like, and when we meet them as a family, you see that they barely acknowledge each other, like in that breakfast scene, it is, they're both doting on the little girl, they both love that little girl, but there's just like this tension within them, and it's just, they're kind of tiptoeing around everything, but it's like he is still trying to fight for their love in this marriage, and she's just, and I get it, I've been to this point where you try and you try and you try, and then the other person just feels like they're not trying anymore, or you've said what you need, and that other person's not giving you what you need, and you just get to a point, you're like, you hit the wall, and that doctor's office when she's like, that's it, I'm out of love with you, I got nothing left, and and at that point it is just far too late.
Rewatching it, I don't know if it's just the optimist in me versus, used to being a pessimist or whatever, but I think they get back together.
Okay, I was going to ask you.
Well, I didn't know, the thought never crossed my mind the first time I watched it. I'm like, it's over, and that's what the story's about, is it's being over. But going back to that, she just says, I need space, and so the story's about a really smart person and a really dumb person who neither one of them can figure out how to make this thing work. But she knows what she thinks she needs, which is space. And he's unwilling to give that because he's very kind of clutchy. His mother left him, and he doesn't want to, like, he just like latches onto her and doesn't want to leave Cindy, his wife. But what she needs is space. And the only time he does anything right in this movie was sticking with her when she said that she was pregnant and giving her the space for the moment that she needed to kind of understand that he's coming back. And then at the end where he walks away. Right. And so we get the feeling that he's leaving, he's done, and she's cut the cord and he's like free falling at this point. But I think she's going to understand. She's a very smart person. She's going to understand that he does love her dearly. He does love the child dearly. But what he needs to do is grow and quit being kind of this man child. And you know, she needs to stop pressuring him to be an artist or or
whatever it is. Yeah,
like stop giving him that pressure.
He has so much potential.
Yeah,
he can do anything.
And so, like, I think if she understands that she's nagging and that's negative, and he understands that he's kind of a bit of a succubus and that's negative, like, I think that if they can grow and understand each other a bit more, they'll get back together. And I think it is a beautiful relationship with them. And they obviously the actors had so much charisma and character. So much chemistry together. So I like to look at it as they are going to get back together, or at least I do now. I never thought about it before.
Well, yeah, I mean, maybe after some time apart.
Yeah, exactly.
Like several months, maybe a year separation.
I think the fact that she's back at home with her dad is going to kind of hammer home the point of the importance of being married to a good guy.
Right, because that one little snippet we saw at the dinner table with her dad, like, wow, what an asshole.
Yeah, he was brutal.
But there was also, I guess, to support your theory that they get back together is when, they're coming from the doctor's office after he blows up and everything, and he throws his wedding ring away, and then he basically falls out of the car to go back and find it, and then she goes
helps him,
she goes and help him.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, so there is something still there.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I could be totally wrong. It'd be interesting to hear what. I'm sure the actors have their own theories on what happens at the end, and I like that it's ambiguous. It feels like a definitive ending, but it's not.
Right.
Anyway, perfect ending. But it's worth asking the director one day.
Yeah. One of the other things that kind of help, like when we meet young Cindy and she's with her grandmother and she asks her about, how do you know when you fall in love? And her grandmother's like, I don't know. Like me. She's like, didn't you love grandpa? And she's like, maybe a little bit. And she tells her to, that she admits that her husband didn't have any regard for her. And she tells Cindy to make sure that the person you fall in love with is worth it to you. And I think that's probably something that hopefully...
Yeah, I guess that's very significant.
Yeah.
Dialogue, yeah.
That, hopefully maybe that's something that Cindy latches onto, and she's always trying to figure out what this worth is that she's speaking of, because, I mean, and the aspect of that Dean will do anything for her and he dotes on her 100%. Yes, he is absolutely worth it. But does she feel of her worth in terms of success, quote unquote, or, what job he holds or how much money he's bringing in? That's an interesting way to, thing to kind of think a little bit more.
Yeah, exactly. And also the fact that part of her decision-making process on whether or not she was going to leave him was the fact that she had this opportunity for work to move away, get an apartment or whatever. And then she just found out that her boss is a scumbag. And then she gets fired from work. Like, that's all stuff that happened immediately before they separated.
Right.
So she's got to dwell on that a bit and find out, is it worth her time to move somewhere? Is it worth the time to start a new life? Or it doesn't make sense to go back with this guy? And I think that, whatever her decision is, it's got to, she'll be genuine with it, and he's a genuine guy. And even if she comes back to him, I think there's going to be a bit in his head that's like, well, did she just come back to me because she no longer has a job?
Right.
Like, it's all very sad, but it's kind of, I think, realistic.
Yeah.
Which is nice, and people do go back to each other. So I'd like to think that they do, and I'd love to see some sort of confirmation on that.
Right,
Yeah,
seriously.
a sequel.
But at least, I would take like a 15-minute short.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I need. I'd just do a press conference.
Right, a blog post, whatever.
Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, this is, you see a lot of movies, the love stories, or you see a lot of movies about, love gone bad. And this is one of the, like you said, this is basically a perfect film of especially depicting that. We see their love story, and then we see the dissolution of it. We see, and just even the directorial choices, as well as the performances from the actors in both time periods, in both time zones, you can just feel it. Like, you feel all the love and excitement in that in the first half of their relationship, and then every time we come back to them in the present day, it's just like, it's so tough. And it's just like a really, like, oh my God, I feel so bad for everybody involved here.
Yeah. Well, I love the going back to the details on it. Just I was blown away originally by the makeup and special effects, and like his tattoos look so realistic, and the paint on his fingers. We talked about that a little bit. His receding hairline, all the little details. But like
that mustache.
Yeah, exactly. The things that the director chose and his way of choosing them, I thought were just absolutely stunning. So the first time we meet Dean, he's got a receding hairline, like the kind of older Dean. Mm-hmm. But then when we're introduced to younger Dean, we don't do a typical kind of Hollywood thing, which is like 10 years ago or 6 years ago or whatever the case may be, you know, flash a card up on the screen. We just see him walking, and he looks into a reflection of a car window, and he runs his hand through his hair. All that's doing is drawing your attention to his hair.
Right.
That's it. And it's such a subtle moment, but it was just perfectly done where you're like, okay, we're not in the same time.
Right.
That's it. That's all you need. I love that both of them met while caring for a loved one. Well, and in his case, it wasn't an actual loved one. It's just a guy that
and that was a really an excellent scene. There's a little detail in as to who Dean is.
Yeah.
Because he didn't have to stick around and like.
No, and his coworkers like, come on.
Right. And he's like, this Harry or Walter. He's just like, unpacks Walter's little his belongings and everything, and not even just unpacks it, he's like decorating. He's like putting stuff up, and then he even talks to him. But yeah, you're right. So yeah, that when we meet them both, they're both caring for someone.
Another little thing that I love, and get back to the little details that build a bigger picture, I guess, is when we see them later on in the movie go to her parents' house and have that really awkward kind of breakfast or dinner or whatever it was. And they go up to her bedroom. You see the images on the wall, and her wallpaper is like flowers and it's nature. And earlier in the movie, they pull off the side of the road, and she gets out of the car, and he's like, "Where are you going?" She's like, "To go take a pee." And he's like, "Wait,
this person's house."
But she just needed that was a moment of her needing some space. So she gets out, she goes into the woods alone, and just like has a thought. Spend some time thinking. We see the wallpaper on her wall, which is all nature and flowery. We see the images on her wall that she tacked up, and you see, if you look closely, it's beaches and forests and just places where you're alone, where you have some space to think.
Right.
So that tells you so much about her character without saying anything.
Right.
It's just like brilliant production design.
Yeah, because she seems to be. We do get the feeling, or I get the feeling that she's in her own head a lot.
Yeah.
And there was something, I think when young Cindy goes to see Bobby, her boyfriend, she's like in the wheelchair, and she's just, kind of like wheeling around for research, whatever reasons. But, and that's, and that relationship, that was pretty, I love the way that they introduced present day Bobby to us before, in that awkward liquor store encounter, and he's like, asks her, "Are you faithful to him?" And it's like, wow.
But then you get it later,
right? It's like,
because she cheated on him,
right?
But I guess I wouldn't say it was cheating.
Also,
it feels like it was over.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I was confused about that. So I was like, were they really together? Did she really cheat on him? I feel like she basically, she flat out let him know that.
Yeah, well, she was avoiding talking to him, so he's just like, he shows up while she's wheeling our grandma into the house, and he's like, "Well, you haven't talked to me. You haven't spent any time talking to me. We need to talk." So she didn't verbalize what she wanted to, or what she's been thinking about, which is this relationship's over. So he's got, I guess, from his perspective, he doesn't know it's over. I'm sure he suspects it's over,
right?
But it's not until he finds the card with Dean's phone number on it, or the office that he works at, and now he suspects that she's cheating with this guy, Dean, but I don't know in the timeline if they've actually hooked up at all. I don't think they had.
If her and Dean had?
Yeah.
When he finds the card, that's actually right after they have left the abortion clinic and after the bridge scene and everything.
Right. Yeah, okay.
So
they had been hooking up at that point. So, so I guess, so technically cheating if one person doesn't know the relationship's over yet. Like, I don't know how that would go.
I think either way, if she had just flat out said, "I'm done with you," and he found that,
absolutely,
he still would have attacked him.
Yeah, but I think it goes into her, it reflects on her insecurities and her inability to articulate what she wants, which is a problem throughout the whole film in terms of relationship, is that she can't tell this guy, "I'm pregnant.
Right.
I want to get an abortion. I don't want anything to do with you because you're a scumbag."
Right.
Like, she never says that. I think that if she had articulated that at any point, things might have changed a little bit, but he's still going to be a jealous kind of dickhead bro dude,
Absolutely.
That's just who he is. But I love the scene where they go and beat him up in the warehouse.
Yeah.
Well done. And my only real qualm with it, watching it a second time, is the shaky camera work for some of the walking scenes.
Yeah, I think what I read was that all of the past scenes were done handheld.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, and it's interesting. So I'm going to go back to my own little project a bit.
Sure.
But one of the things we wanted to do when we made this movie called Hurricane Emma, and it's I was watching a lot of mumblecore films, and my favorite director is this Austrian filmmaker named Michael Haneke, and he just makes really, really brutal dramas that I can't recommend really to anybody because they're very difficult.
Okay.
But if you like movies that are really like Blue Valentine is a really downer movie, but it's like a 1 on the Michael Haneke scale.
Okay.
So, yeah. So the movies I like are like absolutely like horrendous dramas, and so what I wanted to do, which was make this mumblecore film as if directed by Michael Haneke. So mumblecore films are like usually handheld, a lot of movement to kind of make up for the fact that there's not a lot of actual conflict going on and things like that.
Okay.
Michael Haneke, I love his films because he strips out everything cinematic. He just, it's mostly, or it feels like, practical lighting. It's all wide shots. His movie Cachet had maybe like 6 cuts in the entire movie. There's shots where it's 15 minutes of looking outside a building, and you're wondering what we're looking at.
Right.
And you just get this sense of paranoia while staring, and things are happening.
Something's going to happen.
Yeah, and you're like, well, what's happening behind that? Like, we're looking at a window with a curtain, and there's people in there, but what's going on? But this holds for like 15 minutes, and you're like, well, what the hell's that all about? So it makes you really think about it. And he basically strips out soundtracks. He doesn't like score. He doesn't like these, Hollywood things that feel contrived. And what I loved about Blue Valentine is that even though every film is contrived, you have to like see it and plot it out and think it out.
Right.
And it has so much back and forth timeline to it, and the way everything builds on top of each other to get to this ending, it doesn't feel contrived the entire time. The sound, the music design, it's all, subtle, so well done. It doesn't strike you in this like Spielbergian way where it's like, oh, now I need to cry. The music's coming up, now I need to cry.
Right, exactly.
So it comes across really well like that. So what I want to do with my film was do this, if Michael Haneke was directing a mumblecore film. So we did everything that involved, the storyline is basically this girl comes back to her hometown. She's been living in New York. She grew up really close with her cousin in Palm Springs. Her mom stayed there. She moved away across the country with her dad. Her mom died, so she comes back for the funeral, but she misses it because the Greyhound bus that she was on was late. And so automatically we got this conflict between this cousin who's angry at her for leaving and never kind of got over the fact that his cousin was basically like a sister to him. Never got in touch with him, never kept in contact, and never got in touch with her mom after she was taken away. And we don't understand her motivations for things. We just know that he's very angry at her. And everything that involved Emma was just handheld, free-flowing, very kind of loose, and we move around with it, and it felt warm and inviting. Everything with the cousin was static shot and wide shot, and it was very cold and distant. And then as the movie came together, as their relationship got better, started moving a bit more, and you're getting him into her world or her into his world in different ways, and then there's a break at the end, and it's back to being static and back to their own worlds. So it was really interesting to see another movie that was done very similarly, which was the flashbacks were all handheld, and everything else was kind of static shots. So it works out well. So I guess that's a lot of just filmmaker instinct. In that I didn't go to film school or anything, but I think the instincts were there, and it was really nice to see a movie that was done perfectly, and it was the exact type of movie I would have loved to have made. So now I can say, oh, well, next time I can hold Blue Valentine up as the type of movie I want to make. Whereas before that, I didn't really have that.
Right. Well, I guess also, like, doing it handheld, it signifies them having more space or whatever in that period of their life. And then with everything being static, there's just it's so cramped. Like all the shots are really kind of cramped.
Yeah,
and you get
awkward close-ups.
Yeah, and you get more of a feel of like what she means by that she needs more space.
Yeah, that claustrophobic feel. Yeah,
especially that hotel room. Jeez.
Oh, that was brilliant. Oh yeah, him getting in the shower with her. It's just like because when she steps into the shower, she's kind of ducking her head so tight, and then all of a sudden like he gets in there with her, and she's just like, I just
it's like for the love of God, can I have just 7 minutes by myself?
Exactly. And what was interesting also was, and I'm not entirely sure the intent of the director, but there's a moment. So in that like love hotel themed hotel thing, everything is blue or red. So again, it goes back into that blue, red, purple kind of color pattern they go back to. But when they're on the ground having sex, being adult situations. But she
again awkward. It was just an awkward situation.
Awkward. She's just like, "What? You want me to rape you? Like, what do you want? You want me to hit you?"
She's just like, "I just want it over."
Yeah,
for the most part, I want this conversation to be over.
Yeah, but the color was white and warm and inviting. It's a different situation than when we were in the room that they were in, which was all blue and purple, and there was a bit of red light in there. So they go into another room on the floor where the lighting's totally different. The only other time we see that same lighting in the entire movie is when we flash back to their first time that they hooked up, and he's like pulling down her panties, and the lighting is exactly the same. It's like they were just down in the kitchen or the dining room having dinner, and they're up in the room, but it's bright, it's well lit, it's lovely. So I don't know what the director was trying to say in that those were two completely opposite ends of like
that's
the
probably what
spectrum.
It was. Yeah, because also that same song makes an appearance in both of those scenes.
Yeah. So I love the back and forth. I just think it was whether the dialogue was improv or not, it's just a perfect script.
Right. The back and forth. This is like one of the more flawless attempts at time jumps that I have ever seen, because
this is Memento, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Because this is, it's just I'm not taken out of it. Like when we go back to the past, or we jump to the future or the present day, and the past and the present day, it's seamless.
Yeah.
Like I know we're exactly where we are. I'm not confused at any point in time. And it was like this, the first viewing, it was that I knew, instantly, and it was just all very, like you said, with those decisive choices of, costuming and art design and lighting and just like what we're doing with the cameras. And, so
it was very expertly crafted to make sure the audience knew where they were at all times without having to tell them. And that's the type of film that I gravitate towards. I don't know if you've ever seen this, but when Memento came out on DVD, there was a special feature where you can answer a bunch of like psychoanalytical questions. And if you answered C to every single one of them, it opens up kind of a back door to watching the movie in chronological order.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So you can watch all the black and white I can't remember which ones were flashbacks and which, like part of the movie's in black and white and then part of the movie's in color. So the first half of it, if that was the black and white, was the flashback. So you see everything that happens leading up to a point, and then it turns into color, like this like Wizard of Oz. Like, and then you watch it, and it's not an interesting movie that way. But it's really amazing to see all the little details.
Yeah.
Like, oh, well, that's where he got that clothing after he killed that guy in that hotel room and things like that.
That sounds awesome.
Yeah, it would
probably
be
gonna
great
have to do that tomorrow.
Valentine. Yeah, no, I highly recommend it. It was a special edition DVD. You might have to hunt it down.
Damn. I have the DVD.
Or just go
I don't know.
movie. Yeah,
yeah, I got a couple days. No problem.
But it'd be great to see Blue Valentine in chronological order, just to kind of see the little details. But one of the things the reason you're not lost in space and time is because a lot of the flashbacks happen in kind of the same location that we were just at. So like, I think there was a scene towards the end where we go to the dad's house, and then there's a flashback in the dad's house. So we know we're in the same space, but we're not in the same time. And that kind of helped keep us grounded and not lost in things.
Do you think, speaking of, if it was told in chronological order, do you think it would still have the same emotional gravitas?
No, I think that the way it worked was because we're pitting past versus present and ramping up the tension as we go along, because we're seeing this is what it is now versus this is what it was, and it just adds so much emotional depth, kind of seeing and contrasting these two time periods. So where if we saw their romance in the beginning, and then we kind of stop, and then we see the decline of their relationship, I just don't think it would have that same kind of tension that works so well in the movie.
Yeah, I think like seeing it so close, but it's so close together, that makes it that much worse.
Yeah, you don't forget anything because you just saw it.
Right,
like,
exactly.
Oh, man, that's rough.
It would just be like another typical whatever Hollywood romance or love gone bad story.
I love that they do. It's kind of half and half as well. Like there's not like in a lot of Hollywood films with flashbacks, and flashbacks either play a small role to kind of move things forward, or the movie starts in this time period, and then we go for like a prolonged flashback, and then we come back to wrap up the story.
Right.
Whereas this one was 50-50 flashback and present, and they were playing off each other immediately.
Right.
And it just paid off so well.
I think what the director said, he wanted to actually wait 6 years in between shooting the time periods where, Yeah, I could see. Yeah, sure.
Kind of
but
like a Boyhood.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not sure everybody. That is too much to play around with at that point. Too many things change. I think this was done masterfully, and
Cool. Credit to the producers who hired the special effects makeup artists and who hired the art director and who hired the musicians. Like, there's so many little details that are just absolutely impeccable, and it's just a wonderful film. If you haven't seen it, and if you're not sold on it by now,
I know, seriously. So this film, the title, I have never listened to this before, but the title comes from a Tom Waits album of the same name. Are you familiar with the album?
I am, yeah. Tom Waits is brilliant.
Is it? I know, and I enjoy a couple of Tom Waits songs, but is this album particularly good?
Album. Yeah, well, everything. I can't remember what's on. I kind of listen to Tom Waits in this very much like Blue Valentine, in that there's not any sort of chronological order with it. I've got this bin of like 200 Tom Waits songs. When I do put it on, I'll just hit random.
Gotcha.
So I'll hear something from like Mule Variations, and then I'll play against his like early 70s kind of jazzy stuff. So his career, he's done a lot of different sounds and styles over the years, and I don't know where I'm going with that, but he's brilliant.
But you enjoy it. All right. And the song that comes up in both those very awkward, or just like the very opposite sex scenes with them, is You and Me by Penny Johnson and the Quarters.
Okay.
And it's also an extra heartbreaking when because we hear it in the present day first in the hotel room, and they're doing their little slow dance, and it's like, whatever. But then when and then when we go back to when he first introduced her to that song, it's like, that's just even worse. Like, oh my God.
It would have been great, I guess, to see, like, if I have to give it another critique, to see her alone with that song at some point. Like, we never see it. We only ever see it in relation to he's giving it to her, or they're together with it.
Because she could just be reacting the way that she she thinks that he wants her to react, and she just doesn't give a fuck about the song.
Exactly. Yeah, I know people like that.
She's like, oh my God, if I hear that song one more time. Yeah. So, in your professional opinion, what star rating would you give this movie, 1 to 5?
Oh, 1 to 5, it's a 5, yeah.
Yeah. It's definitely a 5 on my end as well. And because this is the Ryan Gosling hour, how about Ryan's performance specifically?
I think his performance is really, really strong here. I don't know if it's as good as in, Half Nelson, or, I know what he does.
Lars and the Real Girl.
So good.
Oh my God, that's my favorite Ryan Gosling film.
That's a great one. I don't like Drive, and I know a lot of people are
I hate it. I wanted to leave the theater on Drive.
I loved the first half. I thought the first half was a great setup, and I was pissed off. Like, you could tell, what's her name, Carrie, I don't know her last name, but I feel like a lot of her roles were given to her because Michelle Williams turned them down.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and she's a great actress on her own, but I feel like it was just an attempt to kind of do another Ryan Gosling, Michelle Williams film, and it was Ryan Gosling being Clint Eastwood in this movie, and it set up really well. I just thought the ending was terrible. And I did see Neon Demon with the same director last year, and I loved it. So it's, and I loved Valhalla Rising, which is one of his early films as well. So the director does good movies. I just hated Drive.
Yeah, I was not a fan of Drive. Yeah. I haven't gotten to that one yet on this podcast, but...
Gotcha. Yeah, no, hold off on it. But yeah, I think the Ryan Gosling performance was amazing. I think that the choice to smoke around the kid was a wrong one, but if that's my only critique, then... Yeah,
I would say a 4.5 just for that in itself, because I feel like...
And the receding hairline, like, you could have done something about that, so...
Now, I read that was based off of the director. Does the director have...
Look up his IMDb page right now.
Okay.
Like, how long ago did you watch Blue Valentine?
I watched half of it yesterday and the other half this morning.
Okay.
So I wasn't
too... still fresh.
Yeah.
That's fine. Just check out his IMDb photo.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. Wow.
He cast himself, like, he's Ryan Gosling's a stellarly attractive man. The director is really close.
Yeah, he's not a bad looking dude.
But you could see you could see a resemblance. They could be brothers.
Yeah, absolutely. So, are you down to watch Blue Valentine again?
Oh yeah, definitely. My wife was wanting to watch it. We tried to find it. So we just discovered there's a little DVD rental place. It is over near where we live in Carrick. Just over
really.
There. Yeah, it's I know. It was a fun. So I used to hate walking to like Blockbuster or Hollywood Video. I would spend an hour and not find anything I'd ever want to watch. And so we walked in that door, and it was just this wave of nostalgia, and then this memory of like, I'm like, oh, this is amazing, and I'm like, oh, but we'll never find anything. And so I called up yesterday to rent the movie because I thought that would be fun. And we don't have a DVD player anymore, but we thought we could play it on a computer or something.
Oh wow! Look at you guys going all the way back.
I know, exactly. And so we're like, well, maybe we can rent a DVD player. And so I called up and they're like, oh, we do have it, but it's rented out. Somebody picked up today. I'm like, oh, well, good.
Interesting.
I thought maybe it was you. And so then I tried to illegally download it, which I don't like the idea of undermining our industry, but it was research purposes.
Right.
And I couldn't download it. Like I tried a few different sites and things, and I'm not very good at downloading. I don't do it very often. And so I couldn't figure it out. So I ended up finding a place that I could stream it. Well, otherwise, I would have had to go off memory, which would have been a terrible idea.
Well, how do you usually watch your movies if you don't have a DVD player and you don't really download?
I do Netflix and I do.
Okay.
We have HBO.
Okay.
We just got Shudder, which is kind of a horror.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah. We got a month for free, and then we went to cancel, and they gave us another month for free. So
well, look at that. All right, we'll just keep doing that. We'll just keep playing that game until they're done.
Yeah, but I would definitely watch it again. I think my wife would like to see it.
Oh, okay, so she hasn't seen this one yet.
She's seen it, but she was willing. She's like, oh, well, I'll watch it with you, and we'll download it, and you can watch it for this research purposes, and I'll watch it to enjoy it. But then I kind of did that while she was off working today, and so if she did want to see it, I would definitely be happy to sit down and watch it again.
Yeah, my husband, he does not like these soul-sucking, like he can't take, he's real like sensitive on those aspects. Because at first,
away from Michael Haneke.
Okay. Because at first he was like, oh, I'll do Blue Valentine with you. It's like, I don't think you want to get into that.
It could be a gateway movie for him, though. Maybe it'll open up doors that he didn't know existed. Yeah.
Well, maybe, I don't know. But I am the one who got him more into horror movies.
Okay. What's your favorite movie of the year? Sidetracking.
Favorite movie of the year?
Yeah.
This year, Get Out.
Okay. Oh,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
By far, because speaking of like horror, it's making horror a little more quote unquote respectable.
Yeah, I love what it did with a mass audience.
Right.
The fact that people are going to go see a black movie.
Exactly. So it broke open a couple more doors, which I appreciate, and made horror a little more smart. And I'm down with it. Like I love it, and that movie, jeez, I couldn't stop talking about it. Like I saw it, like I was so pumped for that movie forever. It came out like my birthday weekend. I was like, nice. Yes, and everybody like my family was like, why do you want to see this? Because like the trailer doesn't really give that much away, and my mom's like, this looks crazy. Why do you want to see this? It was
nuts. I put that in my top 10 of the year, and I was really happy that it wasn't overhyped.
Right.
And I appreciate it. I think I appreciate it more than I loved it, but I think for a first-time filmmaker, like obviously Key and Peele have been doing their thing forever, and two of the funniest guys in Hollywood. For a first-time horror film, a first-time filmmaker, to have two scenes that were absolutely brilliant is such a huge thing.
Which two scenes are you?
The fall through the floor.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, my God. And then the scene where the maid comes in, she's crying.
Oh, God.
And, it's just so tense, and you don't know what the hell's going on. And there's so many wonderful scenes in it. But I think that overall, I just didn't respond, I guess, as much. I think I wanted more of a horror film, but it was a psychological thriller. So I don't know if I just went in thinking a bit differently. But I think that the movie was fantastic, and I think it deserves every bit of praise it gets. I think it deserves every bit of money it makes.
Right.
I can't wait for it to kind of open up some opportunities for people.
I'm very interested to see what else he's going to do, because he says he has, I think
he said he was doing another horror film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He says he has some more in his pocket. So
now he's got money. And he's got people little backing now, which is absolutely fantastic.
Yeah. So that was was a game changer for me.
Yeah.
So I also do like to test the Bechdel test. Absolutely. Terribly.
I was thinking about that as well. Yeah. But I don't think it needed to pass the Bechdel test because it wasn't a film about men where women were shoehorned into it.
Right.
So I think it was a story about it. Yeah, and so it doesn't pass the Bechdel test, but it's not taking the Bechdel test, if that makes sense.
Exactly. So so for those of you who aren't familiar, the Bechdel test is a type of litmus test to assess the presence of women in a movie, and it originated from Alison Bechdel's comic Dykes to Watch Out For back in 1985. And the rules are just 3 simple rules. It has to have at least 2 named women in it. It does have that. They need to talk to each other. It does have that. The number 3, they need to talk to each other about something besides a man. And that doesn't really...
Yeah, she talks with her grandma a bit.
But that was still about her love and her husband.
She talks to her mom a bit. She talks to her coworker, but that's about keeping him out. So
don't let him brainwash you.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, I just... And again, they did such an amazing job of us understanding why the people are saying what they're saying, and like she thinks that she understands their relationship. She thinks that he's an abusive husband. She smells the alcohol on him.
Right.
So I understand where
that
she comes in.
And she's probably had her own marital problems.
Exactly. And so they had like every character, like even the cab driver was brilliant. I'm just like, it's a 2-minute scene or a minute scene, and you could just say you understand so much about this guy from just him saying,
"Don't touch the young lady in my cab."
And he never talks about her to her. She doesn't. He's only talking to her.
Right.
And it's like, I had a feeling it had something to do with his religion. Like, this is, and it's his home, he calls it.
Right.
And so there's a lot that goes into that character. It's just, there's no stock character.
We don't even see him, actually.
Well, they do two really quick cuts of him, like, just like close-up shots.
Okay.
But, yeah, it's just a testament to the writing that there's no stock character in this whole movie. That everybody is absolutely realistic. You bump into these people on the street every day, and these are the shit that people deal with. And we don't know about it because...
This is right, because we're not always up in there. I've never had to encounter being told not to have someone touch me in a cab.
You haven't lived.
Apparently, I haven't taken enough cab rides.
Yeah, exactly.
And also for the special Hey Girl edition, we do the little Gosling gauge, because there are certain types of characters that Ryan tends to gravitate towards. He tends to play. So there's certain pointers that they all kind of reach. For one, does he sing or dance in this?
Both.
Yes. Yeah. And he plays the ukulele.
Yeah, this was before it became super hip.
The ukulele?
Before it became a really hipster thing. I think that there's also a lot of humor in it and a lot of like in-jokes. The fact that I think his band's album,
Dead Man's Bones,
brilliant album.
Yes.
I think it came out in 2011, I want to say.
Maybe, I think so.
And the movie came out it premiered at Sundance in 2010. I think it's listed on IMDb as 2011. But he says specifically, I don't sing, so I have to do it in a funny voice.
Right.
But it's just like, oh, well.
And that's much like how he sings on his album.
Yeah. So I think the director was aware of that side of him and things like that. So, but yeah, he definitely sings and dances.
Is his character eccentric?
He isn't, well, yes, he is. He is, but it's a very natural eccentric. I think that he's funny and he's trying way too hard to make her laugh all the time. He just wants to humor her. And what he does sometimes is eccentric, like when he had that speech about like, oh, this is the sounds they make, this is how they laugh in the future. And it's just him trying to be cute. So
or let's eat how leopards eat.
Yeah, exactly. And so those are some weird little eccentricities. I don't know.
Yeah. Or even like at the dinner table when she tells what her favorite teacher's name is.
Oh yeah.
And he's like makes a joke and everybody else is just like, what's so funny?
Yeah, exactly. So yes, I think that it ticks that box, but not in the same way as some of his other roles.
Lars.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. About as odd as they come.
Or even United States of Leland.
I haven't seen that one in a long time.
Did he disappear into his character? I would say definitely older Dean. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Younger Dean. Could have been just Ryan on a Wednesday.
Exactly. Yeah.
The character smug level, 1 through 5. I would give it more of a 4, just for the fact that the way that he pursued her.
Oh yeah, his going after her was very full bore. Like he had tunnel vision on her, and he went after her, and he put on all the charm and everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think
he went to like go talk to his grandmother and like give it.
Yeah. So his confidence in getting her was up there. I don't know if I would qualify that as smug though. So I don't know how to answer that one.
Okay.
Yeah. I think the older Dean was the opposite of smug though. He knew
he was kind of beat down.
Yeah, he was just a regular kind of blue collar guy that just wanted to be a blue collar guy, but he knew that he had, or people had expectations of him that he just couldn't like live up to. And
yeah.
I think that wore him down, so very little smugness.
And so, yeah, absolutely. By that point, like very, very low. And even when she says, I wish you would get a job that you don't have to drink at 8 in the morning. He's like, I have a job where I get to drink at 8 in the morning. Exactly. Like, is that what you believe, Dean? Or is this what you have like worked it out?
Are you talking yourself into it? Or were you waiting for this moment? Like you worked it in your head. I don't think he thinks a lot ahead of time, but I think that he was probably aware that she thought he was an alcoholic.
Yeah. Yeah. Which I'm not. Well, I don't know. I don't know. I know that was kind of fucked up when she left him at the hotel.
Yeah.
That was kind of a dick move on her part.
Yeah. But I have to go to work to save my job, but she also wanted probably escape from that. But I think she was an alcoholic as well. So like they
the amount of liquor they brought to the hotel for one night.
Yeah, exactly. And like she gravitates towards drinks, but he, she's angry at him for drinking before going to work, but whereas she obviously couldn't do that because her job's a bit more.
I think this is more she was a little jealous.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, exactly. Like if they could just be charismatic, freewheeling youths forever, they'd be totally fine together.
Right.
But because they had to grow up, it just kind of ruined everything.
Yeah.
That's life in a nutshell.
There it is. And that's a perfect note to end it on. Thank you, Alex, so much. Where can people, do you have any work online that you or websites?
They can check out indiegroundfilms.com. There's a blog with it, but you can check out our YouTube channel as well. And then my own personal work as writer, director, production designer at alexcassun.com.
Awesome.
CASSUN.com.
Nice. Thank you very much again for taking the time. I really appreciate your insight. It was a really good talk on Blue Valentine, and I'm happy that you did this.
Yeah, I'll come back again someday.
Yes, please. And it won't be just a Ryan Gosling film. We'll try to do something else.
I'm diverse. I can talk about a lot of different things.
Awesome. All right, so please subscribe, follow, like us on Twitter at DTW Podcast, Down to Watch Podcast on Facebook, and the show is on iTunes and Libsyn under Rugged Angel Productions. Rugged Angel is one word. Thank you for listening, and until next time.
You and me.